In the quiet stillness of the hospital room, beneath the soft hum of machines and the gentle flicker of monitors, I cradled my newborn in a world that felt both fragile and immense. My baby had arrived earlier than anyone expected, a small, delicate being wrapped in tubes and hope. The world outside seemed to blur into a slow, steady rhythm, one heartbeat at a time. That evening, with hands trembling yet resolute, I opened my phone and typed a message to the family group. We're in the NICU. Please pray. Those words, so simple and vulnerable, were more than a request. They were a quiet plea for strength, for support, for a shared breath in a moment that felt too heavy to carry alone. Messages began to pour in, warm and steady like a soft rain. Among them was my aunt's. Her reply was curt, distant, no prayers, no words of comfort, just an echo of the past. Years of silent tension and unresolved pain flickered through my mind. She had always been a shadow in our lives, someone who watched but never fully reached out. That night, her silence felt louder than any words. As the days passed, I found myself reflecting, not on her coldness, but on the gentle, persistent strength I was discovering within myself. The kind of strength that grows not from anger or resentment, but from quiet resolve and the determination to protect what matters most. Revenge, I realized, was not about retaliation or harsh words. It was about reclaiming my peace, my dignity. It was setting boundaries softly, without bitterness, and allowing myself to heal in my own time. Sometimes, the most profound revenge is simply living well, loving deeply, and finding calm amid the chaos. I began to understand the complex tapestry of family, woven with threads of love, disappointment, hope, and pain. My aunt's silence was a reflection of her own struggles, perhaps her own wounds that had never healed. It was not my burden to fix, but a reminder that every soul carries its own quiet battles. In the gentle rhythm of each day, feeding my baby, watching the tiny fingers curl around mine, whispering promises of a future, I found a new kind of peace. A peace that came not from others' approval, but from the steady beat of my own heart, guiding me toward forgiveness, resilience, and love. As my baby grew stronger, so did I. The hospital walls, once cold and intimidating, became a space of transformation, teaching me that even in the most fragile moments, life carries the promise of renewal. The fragility of new life, a gentle revenge story. In the hush of a softly lit hospital room, the world seemed to hold its breath. Outside, the evening sky dimmed into gentle twilight, but inside, time felt suspended, every second stretching like the slow drip of rain against a window pane. The baby, tiny and fragile, lay nestled in a clear plastic incubator, surrounded by the quiet beeping of machines, steady rhythms that marked a delicate dance between life and uncertainty. This was not the beginning I had imagined. When I first dreamed of motherhood, I pictured laughter and lullabies, soft blankets, and sleepy smiles. But here, in this sterile space, the reality was more tender, more fragile, and infinitely more profound. My baby had come too soon, a whisper of a life that demanded strength neither of us yet knew we had. The fragility of those first moments carved a new understanding into my heart. Every breath my child took was a miracle. Every flutter of tiny fingers was a fragile hope clinging to a vast unknown. And yet, amidst this tender vulnerability, there was a quiet fire burning inside me, a slow, steady flame of resolve. It wasn't the fire of anger or bitterness. No, this was a different kind of flame, one forged in the silent moments of fear and hope, in the spaces where love and pain intertwined. My family knew I was struggling. I sent a message to our group chat, "We're in the NICU. Please pray." The words felt fragile, like a whisper cast into the wind, hoping to find ears willing to listen. But the response I received from my aunt was cold and detached. Her silence, more than any harsh word, was a reminder of old wounds and unspoken grievances. She had never been warm or close, often watching from a distance, wrapped in her own judgments and distance. For a fleeting moment, a shadow passed over my heart. The fragile new life I held so carefully seemed to mirror the fragile thread of family ties, easily strained, easily broken. But then, a new understanding emerged from that shadow. I realized that my revenge would not be loud or harsh. It would not be in returning coldness with coldness, or bitterness with bitterness. Instead, my revenge would be in honoring this fragile new life with all the love and tenderness it deserved. My revenge would be the fierce protection of my child's fragile spark against all indifference and neglect. So, I let my aunt's silence fall away like a leaf in the wind. I poured my strength into each gentle breath, each whispered lullaby in the stillness of night. I built a fortress of love around my baby, a fortress so strong it could weather any storm. The fragility of new life had taught me this. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is to nurture what is most precious with unwavering care. It is to rise above the coldness of others by creating warmth and light in the smallest of miracles. The power of community and prayer. A gentle revenge story, The moment I sent the message, "We're in the NICU, please pray," I pressed send with a trembling heart, my breath catching somewhere between hope and fear. That small note was more than words on a screen. It was a bridge, a fragile thread reaching out into the unknown, seeking the warmth of others in a cold, uncertain place. In the quiet aftermath, my phone began to hum softly, one message after another trickling in like gentle drops of rain on a still pond. Each reply was a small flicker of light in the dimness. Words of comfort, prayers whispered across invisible spaces, heart emojis, and hopeful thoughts. And then there was my aunt's message. It was brief, almost indifferent, a coldness that struck like a subtle chill in the warmth of the group's support. She neither offered a prayer nor a kind word, only a clipped response that felt like a wall quietly closing between us. For a moment, the pain of her silence was sharper than any word. I felt exposed, as if the fragile hope I'd sent out was met with an echo of indifference. But then, something within me shifted. The power of the community's gentle prayers and steady support became a balm. I began to see my aunt's silence not as a wound to fight with fire, but as a mirror reflecting her own distance from love and connection. In that realization, my revenge took root, not in harsh words or sharp retaliation, but in embracing the warmth that others freely offered. I chose to let the power of community and prayer be my shield and my strength. I found solace in the many voices lifting me up, each prayer a quiet hymn, weaving a blanket of comfort around my baby and me. I allowed myself to lean into the kindness that poured in from friends, family, even strangers who understood the fragile weight of new life. And in doing so, I reclaimed my peace. The cold silence from one corner of my family no longer held power over my heart. Instead, it was replaced by the gentle chorus of those who cared, a reminder that love, expressed through connection and prayer, is the most powerful force of all. The lesson was clear. Revenge does not always roar like thunder. Sometimes, it whispers softly in the form of grace, acceptance, and the quiet choice to surround yourself with light rather than darkness. By embracing the power of community and prayer, I found a gentle victory. Not over others, but over fear, isolation, and despair. And in that victory, I held my baby closer, cradling not just a fragile life, but a resilient spirit ready to grow surrounded by love. Family dynamics unveiled a gentle revenge story when my baby was born premature. The fragile new life we held in our hands quietly revealed so much more than just vulnerability. It peeled back layers of our family's story, exposing the delicate threads and hidden spaces between us, especially with my aunt. In that quiet hospital room, while the soft hum of the NICU machines kept time, my mind drifted through memories of family gatherings, conversations half-spoken, and silences heavier than words. My aunt, once a constant presence, had become a distant figure over the years, her love wrapped in a veil of criticism and cold detachment. I sent the message to the family group, seeking prayers, support, connection. The flood of responses warmed my heart, everyone except her. Her silence was not just absence, it was a presence all its own. A reminder of unhealed wounds, of conversations never had, of affection withheld. That night, as I watched my tiny baby breathe, I felt the weight of those unspoken things. The disappointment, the misunderstandings, the quiet judgment, the ache of wanting a family to hold you close in your most vulnerable moments, and instead feeling the distance stretch wider. But in the stillness, I understood something profound. My aunt's coldness was not a reflection of my worth or the value of my child. It was a shadow cast by her own fears and hurts, a pattern I didn't have to carry. And so, my revenge was gentle but deliberate. It was not shouting or cutting ties, but a quiet setting of boundaries, an act of self-preservation wrapped in compassion. I chose to protect my heart and my baby from the chill of neglect without anger or spite. Instead, I filled the spaces left empty with love and kindness from those who truly cared. I nurtured the relationships that brought warmth and light, and slowly, I built a new family in my heart, one that honored respect, empathy, and understanding. This was the true victory, reclaiming my story from the shadows of old family dynamics, refusing to let bitterness root in my soul. It was learning that love sometimes means letting go of expectations and embracing peace in whatever form it comes. In the soft glow of the NICU, I found healing not only for my baby but for myself. My aunt's silence no longer echoed with pain. It became a quiet lesson in strength, resilience, and the power of choosing my own path. And with each gentle breath my baby took, I whispered a promise to raise a life free from the coldness of past wounds, surrounded by the warmth of love chosen and given freely. Silent battles and internal strength, a gentle revenge story. When my baby was born premature, the world outside seemed to rush by, filled with noise and urgent voices. But inside, in the stillness of the NICU, time slowed to a fragile, deliberate pace. It was in those quiet hours, beside the incubator's gentle glow, that I faced battles no one could see. The physical fragility of my newborn was clear for all to witness. But there were silent battles unfolding within me, fierce, private struggles that shaped every breath I took. Fear, doubt, exhaustion, and an aching helplessness wrapped around my heart like a heavy cloak. Each day was a test of endurance, a quiet fight to hold hope steady when the future seemed uncertain. Amid this turmoil, my aunt's distant silence felt like another battle, a subtle but persistent ache. Her coldness was not loud or harsh, it was a quiet withdrawal, a refusal to step into the space where I needed her most. It was as if she had chosen distance over connection, leaving me to navigate these stormy waters alone. At first, that sting of abandonment pricked deep. I wrestled with the urge to respond in kind, to mirror her silence, to guard myself with coldness. But something softer, stronger grew within me. I realized my true revenge was not in matching pain with pain, but in cultivating a well of internal strength that no silence could dry up. Every whispered prayer, every gentle touch, every moment spent watching my baby fight to survive was a quiet victory. I learned to trust the resilience buried deep inside me, a steady light that glowed brighter with each challenge faced. I became my own protector, my own source of courage. And with that, my revenge became clear, not vengeance against another, but a reclamation of my power. I refused to let bitterness poison my spirit or the fragile hope that cradled my child's life. Instead, I chose compassion. For myself, for my baby, even for the aunt who could not show up. This internal strength was a fortress built brick by brick, with patience and tenderness. It was the calm in the storm, the quiet voice that whispered, "You are enough. You will carry us through." In that slow, reflective space, I understood that true power often lives in silence. In the battles fought quietly, away from the eyes of the world. And in that silence, I found a profound peace, a gentle triumph that no coldness or neglect could ever take away. As I held my baby close, feeling the tiny heartbeat steady beneath my palm, I knew that the greatest revenge was this: to rise each day, to love fiercely, and to build a life rooted in quiet strength and unwavering hope. The subtle forms of revenge. A gentle revenge story. When my baby was born prematurely, the world around me seemed fragile, like glass. Every moment precious, every breath a delicate balance. In the midst of this fragility, I sent a simple message to the family group: "We're in the NICU, please pray." It was a plea for support, a call for kindness. Among the many responses, my aunt stood apart, not in kindness, but in its quiet coldness. No prayers, no encouragement, just silence wrapped in distance. That silence was a wound, but it was also a spark. It stirred something inside me, not anger, not bitterness, but a resolve that felt deep and unshakable. Revenge, I realized, doesn't always come roaring like a storm. Sometimes it is subtle, slow and quiet. It's the gentle reclaiming of one's dignity when it feels like the world has stripped it away. In the soft glow of the hospital room, watching my tiny baby fight for each breath, I understood that my revenge wouldn't be harsh words or harsh acts. It would be something much quieter, more powerful. It would be in living well, living with grace, patience, and self-respect. My revenge was in the way I held my baby close, nurturing fragile life with steady hands and a calm heart. It was in every moment I chose to rise above coldness and neglect, in every act of kindness I gave or accepted. It was in allowing myself to heal, to grow stronger, and to walk away from bitterness. This subtle revenge was an act of self-love and protection. It was a boundary quietly set. No longer would I allow the coldness of another to define my worth or diminish the joy and strength I was finding in this new chapter. I discovered that true revenge is sometimes the softest victory, a reclaiming of peace in the face of hurt. It is choosing to be gentle with oneself, to nurture one's spirit rather than fight battles that lead only to exhaustion and pain. And in that gentle strength, I found a quiet power. A power that no silence, no distance, could ever take away. As my baby grew stronger, so did I, not through confrontation, but through the simple, steady acts of love and resilience. This, I knew, was the most profound kind of revenge: to live fully, lovingly, and peacefully, despite the shadows of the past. Growth through forgiveness and reflection. A gentle revenge story, the NICU had a quiet hum to it, like the steady whisper of time. Days there passed slowly, not by clocks but by milestones. Tiny gains, shallow breaths, stronger cries. As I sat by my baby's side, hours blending together, I was often alone with my thoughts. In that silence, I met parts of myself I hadn't spoken to in years. Among them was the memory of my aunt, sharp in some places, dull in others. She hadn't always been distant. When I was younger, she had moments of warmth, though always wrapped in conditions I didn't understand until much later. She loved in measures, in fragments, often clouded by comparisons and a certain unspoken resentment. And when she withdrew, it was always quiet, like a door closing without a sound. So when I reached out, "We're in the NICU. Please pray," and received only that same familiar silence in return. It wasn't entirely surprising, but it still hurt. I thought that life, in its most fragile and urgent form, might dissolve old distances. It didn't. I spent days replaying her coldness in my mind, wondering what I had done or failed to do. I thought about what I might say to her one day, how I'd let her know she had disappointed me again. But those thoughts grew heavy and stale. They didn't comfort me, they drained me. Then one morning, as I watched my baby sleep, tiny chest rising and falling with soft, perfect effort, I realized I didn't want to carry that weight anymore. What if the real revenge wasn't confrontation? What if it was forgiveness? Not the kind that excuses or forgets, but the quiet kind. The kind that sets down the burden and walks away lighter. The kind that whispers, "You no longer have power over how I feel." So I began to reflect, not just on her, but on myself, on the expectations I had held, the hurt I had clung to. I saw her as a woman shaped by her own stories, her own wounds, perhaps never given the language to love fully or openly. I would not let that excuse her silence, but I would let it explain it. And in that explanation, I found space for grace. Forgiveness didn't come in a rush. It came in slow drips, each one softening the edges of old pain. And with each drip, I felt something shift inside me. A quiet strength grew, a knowing that I didn't need her apology to move forward. I had already built something more powerful than her absence, a life rooted in care, love, and clarity. In choosing forgiveness, I chose to grow beyond the script she had written for me. I chose to love without waiting for it to be returned. I chose to nurture my child without the shadows of bitterness hovering overhead. That was my gentle revenge, not a cold shoulder, not a dramatic exit, just growth. Quiet, deliberate growth, the transformative journey of parenthood. A gentle revenge story, parenthood, doesn't announce its arrival with clarity. It seeps in quietly, often through exhaustion, through the ache of waiting rooms, through the quiet hours before dawn when the world is asleep, but you're not. For me, it arrived in the pale blue light of the NICU, where the hum of machines blended with whispered prayers and hopeful glances at a monitor screen. My baby, born weeks too soon, lay wrapped in warmth not just from the incubator, but from every ounce of love I had to give. She was small, frighteningly so, but she carried in her the immensity of my transformation. I was no longer just a daughter, a niece, a name on a group chat. I was now a mother, and in that quiet fact lived a whole new world. It was this transformation, not dramatic or loud, but slow, internal, and permanent, that became my revenge. You see, when I sent the message to the family, "We're in the NICU, please pray," what I was truly saying was, see me, stand with me, witness this moment. Some did, some didn't. My aunt, in particular, responded with a silence that stung. It wasn't just the absence of words, it was the presence of distance. A silence that echoed years of being overlooked, misjudged, and quietly dismissed. She had always carried an air of detachment, giving affection in crumbs, withdrawing it when it mattered most. And now, in this most delicate moment, her silence returned like an old, unwelcome habit. But this time I didn't shrink. Motherhood was shaping me. Each sleepless night, each whispered lullaby, each moment of standing strong beside my baby was carving out something new inside me, something unshakable. There wasn't time to be small anymore, not with a life depending on me. And in that urgency, I found clarity. This clarity became the truest form of revenge, not against her, but against everything in me that had once needed her approval, her attention, her care. I realized I didn't need them anymore. My baby, in her fragile strength, was teaching me something profound: to root my worth, not in the presence or absence of others, but in my own ability to love, to protect, to rise. And so, as the days passed, I let my aunt's silence drift further away. I stopped reaching for it. I stopped resenting it. Instead, I turned inward. I turned toward my child and toward myself. Parenthood changed everything, not just my role, but my rhythm, my sense of time, of priority, of identity. I no longer carried the same weight of old hurts. There was simply no room for them. My hands were full, holding something far more precious: the future. And in that quiet shift, I had my victory. No confrontation, no sharp words, just a quiet stepping forward while others stayed behind. That, I learned, is the most powerful revenge of all: to become more than what they ever believed you would be, to grow where they offered no nourishment, to love more fiercely, more fully than you were ever shown. Parenthood transformed me. It broke me open and then built me back stronger, softer, deeper. And in that transformation, I finally understood some people will never meet you where you are. But it doesn't matter, because the journey itself carries you beyond them.